A lot of real estate investors have questions about the rules in Ohio regarding wholesaling. I'm here at the Ohio Department of Commerce's Division of Real Estate, and I'm very fortunate to have two of the state's top regulators with me to help educate investors on what's legal and what isn't legal. Division Counsel Kimberly Wells and Staff Attorney Sheila Vitale, thank you to both of you for joining me and taking time to be a resource to the members of National RIA. Let me ask this question, ladies. Is it an oversimplification to say that if you're trying to make money on the purchase or sale of real estate and you are not a principal in the transaction or a licensee, then you're engaged in illegal conduct?
I don't believe that's an oversimplification because you're looking at 473501, which if you pare that down comes down to this: who for another. So who for another for other valuable consideration with the intention or expectation of receiving a fee, commission, or other valuable consideration basically brings two people together to purchase real estate. So for example, or to sell real estate or to do any of the other things that are enumerated in A1 through 9 of 473501. So if I am not an owner of the property or meeting an exception that is set out in 4735, if I'm not meeting one of those exceptions and it is not my property and I am trying to help two people sell it, buy it, I am running afoul of 473501. I need a license to bring two people together to do that kind if I am going to expect a fee. And your question says if I'm trying to make money. So I'm presuming I'm collecting a fee.
A fee, consideration, compensation, maybe a facilitation fee, whatever they call it. There's so many creative names that I see out there now, but it all boils down to money.
Right. Who for another for a fee?
For another for a fee. Okay. All right. So let's ask this next question. Based on Ohio Revised Code Section 473501, what's the best way for an individual who is a principal to make an offer to buy real estate when they're not being represented by an agent or a broker?
They can go right ahead and buy property themselves. If you are buying a piece of property for yourself,
okay,
or if you are a officer of a company, a member of an LLC, of one of the legal entities, you can buy property in the name of that entity or yourself, and you can sell property that you own. It comes down to ownership. If you own or have an ownership interest, then you can buy and sell your own property and you do not need to use a licensee. For example, for sale by owner.
Okay, so that key word there is ownership.
Right.
If I want to buy it, then I can make a written offer to go buy it.
Absolutely.
Now, what about if I want to sell real estate? Do I have to be represented by an agent or a licensee if I want to sell something that I own?
If you own it, you can sell it for sale by owner. You see it all the time, and that's perfectly fine. We recommend that you talk to a lawyer. There's a lot of things that happen during a real estate transaction that you should have some legal representation in, but if you want to sell your property yourself, you can do that.
What if I don't yet own it, but I think I'm going to own it? Can I try and sell it now?
Sell the property?
Sell the property.
No, you may not sell the property. You are limited to your legal interest.
My legal interest. We'll get into that in just a minute because I really like that. But Sheila said something first that I want to follow up on. Can a person use an entity such as an LLC or a corporation or a limited partnership or even a trust, which is owned or controlled by that unlicensed individual, to make an offer to buy real estate?
If that person is buying it for the entity and is a member, employee, regular employee, or officer of that entity, then yes. If they are outside and buying it for another, then that is an activity that requires a license.
I love that word you said, regular employee. That means they can't be a one-time agent.
Right.
They've got to be a regular employee. They've got to be a member, or I'm sorry, they've got to be either a manager with authority in the LLC to do it.
Correct.
They've got to be an officer of the corporation. They've got to be the general partner or an employee of the general partner of a limited partnership. They've got to be the trustee of the trust.
Right.
Or they've got to be a
Correct.
regular employee of that entity.
And we're going to take that one step further if you don't mind.
Please.
Regular employee does not, from the division's perspective, has it ever contemplated an independent contractor arrangement. It is a regular employee, a W-2 employee. So
W-9 on file.
Okay. Right. So that's
That,
I wanted to focus on that.
I'm
too.
glad you clarified that. That's important to know. So here's the next question that I've got for you. If I can use an entity to buy it, can the entity that owns it sell it while not hiring a broker or an agent to do it?
Yes.
If they own it.
If they own it. Ownership is
Okay.
the key. If you own it, you can sell it.
Okay.
The law allows that exception.
Now, here comes the big question. Marketing what I don't own. Can I market for sale something that I don't own in any way? Is there any exception under 473501 to market something that I don't own?
You have to. You can market your legal interest. So let's kind of bring
Okay.
this into terms that make
Sure.
a little more sense that people understand. Essentially, no, you can't market something you don't own. But if you have a contract to purchase, you have to try to sell your contract, not the property. So I can't enter into a contract to purchase 123 Main Street here in any place, Ohio, and then turn around, and I only have the contract to purchase, and then turn around and advertise for sale, 123 Main Street, any place, Ohio. I don't own that. I have a contract interest. You can only market the legal interest that you own.
So that means if I only have a contract and I want to market that contract, I can't be showing pictures of the house, can I?
No.
Okay. Now, I've got another question for you that I kind of skipped over and I want to go back to, and that is based on Ohio Revised Code Section 473501. Is it permissible for a person to market and assign a contract which that person holds as a principal to buy real estate?
You can, under contract law, contracts are assignable.
Unless they say otherwise.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Unless they say otherwise. So if you enter into a purchase contract with the intention to close on that contract, you can't enter into the contract as a way to circumvent license law. So you need to be a bona fide purchaser of the contract. If you enter into that and the contract is assignable, then you can market your interest, which is the contract, to another party if in the future you decide you weren't going to close on that contract and you know someone that's would like to close on that property. But it comes back to the original contract. You can't just tie up property.
So if I'm going to put something under contract, I better have the clear intent of being able to close on it.
You better have the intention to close and close on it if it comes to it, or suffer the consequence of potentially breaching that contract.
So suffer the consequences means that if I put something under contract and then I choose not to buy it, I have to be prepared to either walk away from my earnest money, which had better be significant,
Right.
or I better be prepared to get sued, or both.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. What if I'm like, well, I'm just going to put down $100 and go ahead and sue me because the LLC doesn't own anything? What does the division think about that?
It is going to go back to the intention when you entered into the contract, because there are things that do come up that would prevent a closing.
Sure.
So, what we always go back to is, did you ever intend to close on that property, or was it intent to tie up? What does that contract say? Some of the language we see thrown into these contracts, I won't close on this until I find my end buyer. I have no intention of buying this property myself. I intend to sell it to someone else for much more.
I think language like that means it's not even a contract.
Exactly.
Right.
So then you don't have
Absolutely.
anything to go market.
Right.
Right.
Okay. All right, so we're on the same
We
page here.
agree with that, yes.
Okay, good. So, but I want to go back. I want to talk more about. So you can market and assign a contract that you have on a piece of property that you have every intention and ability to close on, that
Correct.
you've got under contract.
Yes.
So I guess the question then is, I can market the contract. What are the are there any acceptable or unacceptable, I should ask you this way, what are unacceptable ways of marketing that contract? Have you-
Identifying solely the property.
Right.
Acting as if you own the property in your marketing. For example, 35 acres of beautiful farmland for sale when you only have a contract. Marketing a beautiful rental property, looking for investors. If you put out in the advertising that and it looks as if you own the property when you don't, then that is completely unacceptable.
So if a reasonable person reading my ad would think that I'm actually the owner of record, I'm doing something wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
But if my ad says for sale, contract on, 3-2 in Shaker Heights, Ohio, with 2,400 square feet, somebody who reads that ad is going to say, it's a contract.
It's a contract. You're
Yes.
selling your interest.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
That
All right.
contractual interest.
Because I haven't identified a piece of property. I'm not given an address. I'm not showing a picture. I'm describing I've got a contract on a 3-2, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,400 square feet in a certain location.
Right,
By
and I
city
would-
or by city zip code or whatever.
And I would expect that you would identify what you have a contract on, otherwise no one would ever read your ad.
Or no one would ever decide if they want to know more. Yeah,
Correct. Right,
exactly. All right. So ladies, one of the other questions that I know somebody watching this video is going to ask is going to be, well, can a contract to buy real estate, can it be assigned more than once? Can I assign or sell my assignment?
Under contract law? Yes. But I mean, you can't operate in a vacuum. You can't say, well, I can assign this contract. There's nothing in this contract that says it can't be assigned. It doesn't say
Right.
that it can't be reassigned. But what's the intention here? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to avoid and walk around license law? What is your intention by reassigning it? What are you trying to accomplish? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what is the purpose of the multiple assignments? Was every party involved along the line entering into the contract with the intention of closing? And what does the assignment say? We go back, especially as a regulator, and we'll look at, show me what you put in all these contracts. Was there language that I could get out of this if I wanted to? Was there little loopholes and, I never intended to purchase this property? And are you just stringing along this seller? Did the closing date pass months ago and you're just continuing down the line? So
Right. That brings up about 2 or 3 different points that both of you raised that I really want to go into. One of the things that I want to make sure everybody understands is stringing along a seller is reprehensible.
Right.
Because that person who thinks that they've got their house sold has taken it off the market in some respect or another. They might be soliciting backup offers, they may not be, but they think their house is sold.
Correct.
And then this, quote, investor, and I have a problem with that word, but anyhow, this investor strings them along and then doesn't perform, and this seller who's had their house off the market for 90, 120 days, what are they left with?
Nothing. The house.
The house. And they didn't
Which
want the
they
house,
didn't
that's
want
why
the
they
house.
didn't sell.
Right.
Okay, so there's a problem there.
Sure.
Okay.
yeah, and there's especially a problem when you are looking at distressed owners, people that are, Ohio has a lot of issues with people that need to sell their houses. They're doing short sales. They're behind on their mortgage. So it creates a bigger problem that even goes outside of the real estate industry when that happens. But it's really a lot more harm than just keeping that house.
I don't think we should call them short sales anymore. I think we need to call them long sales
Right.
because of how long it takes the banks and the servicers to approve it. Because I literally have seen multiple situations where the buyer has been saying, I've got the cash in the bank, I'm waiting to close. Where's the approval letter? Where's the approval letter? And months go by.
Right.
And it's so frustrating. But anyhow, the second thing I wanted to go back to is we talked about this. What was the person's intent when they put the property under contract to buy it? And that intent is measured a lot by their actions, correct? Or evidenced by their actions.
Absolutely.
Right.
So one of the things I want to talk about is if you're investigating somebody and you see that they made 50 offers that week and they only put 2 of them under contract because those were the best two, would you look at that person differently than someone who made 50 offers and put 10 of them under contract?
I think you'd have to look at the entire situation, but yes, it is suspect. Are
Okay.
they all cash offers? Does this person truly have the ability to close on those 10 properties for a cash value of, whether it's $30,000 a house or $100,000 a house? Do they have that ability to actually close on those 10 properties? What does the contract say?
Or in the case you first said, the 50. I mean, that's an awful lot of activity.
It's a lot of offers going out.
That's right.
That's a lot of offers going out. And there's some people who just make the offers ridiculously low to see who will accept. I understand that. But I think when you come back and say, okay, well, they've accepted and now I've got to, finalize this thing.
Right.
Do I have the money? Do I have the resources to close on this thing? I think that's a very good point. And I think that a lot of people watching this video need to go back and really look at what's my financial backing at the time I'm making these offers.
Well, absolutely. Do you think that by putting out the offer that they're not going to agree? And then all of a sudden, what are you going to do? I don't have the money?
Yep. All right, so let's go back and I'm going to ask this other question. We've talked about this as being a principal in a transaction. And I've got a short little list of who I think are potential principals in a real estate transaction. And the first one is obviously the owner of record, who's the seller. Okay. The second principal would be the buyer. And they potentially could assign the contract if they chose to.
They could.
If someone came along and said, hey, I like it, I want it, I'll pay you more than what you're going to,
Right.
The third thing is then the potential new buyer or assignee, that person who wants to, overbid, say, hey, I'm sorry I got there a day late, I'm willing to pay more because I'm a day late.
Right.
I also see current lien holders are a potential principal to a transaction, particularly under short sales or long sales or whatever we want to call them now, because they control the terms of the transaction.
And it's going to, with lien holders is where it raises a little flag
Okay,
to
I
us
wanna hear
because
this.
there are the lien holders such as the mortgage holder.
Right.
Absolutely. In certain situations where you need bank approval because you're buying it for less than the mortgage that holds, yes, absolutely, they are involved in
Right.
that transaction.
Okay.
A lien put on a property by somebody who has now just tied it up through a contract or had an option contract, which is another thing we see, which allows them to they just slap a lien on that property. You told me that I could buy this potentially, so I'm going to file that as a lien on the property. That situation where you were never a bona fide purchaser, you never had the intent, you were just tying up that property so that they couldn't sell it without you making your money out of it. That's a questionable lien. So,
Okay, that's
and
questionable.
especially,
But if they have the intent to buy and they've got the resources to perform, is it okay for them to put the world on notice that they've got the right to buy this property because they're afraid somebody else might try and undercut them?
I think it depends on the situation. I think you need to look at the lien you're putting on the property too. Is it a
Okay.
legitimate lien?
Well, I'm referring to, I use the word notice. I referred
Okay.
like filing a memorandum or notice of option or notice of contract, putting the world on notice that I've got the right to buy this property.
If you enter into that and you intend to close on it
Okay.
and you intend to purchase it, and you're not just doing this to circumvent license law while you find that actual person that's going to close on the property. And, and going back a little bit to the potential assignee, if you assigned a contract, one thing that needs to occur is that contract is the contract that needs to be closed on. So there can't be this new contract signed with a different purchase price at the closing. You can't be having multiple contracts now arise. So, in the assignment, it goes back to contract law. That's the contract.
Right, that's the contract that got assigned.
That's right.
Right.
You're signing this contract, not the one that you wrote
Yeah.
subsequently.
Now, I could see a situation where we've seen addendums to contracts
Right.
with one or two, like extending the closing date or who's paying for what part of the closing cost. I've seen that done just before closing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And things like that are legitimate changes that occur that the parties fully intentionally agree to, but where we see, and we've seen in the past, where at the closing, a whole new contract is pulled together because they don't want the seller to know that original purchaser, who had the intention of just assigning the contract, made $20,000 off the deal, made even $5,000 off the deal. They don't want that to be known to anyone, so they kind of, here's a new contract, just sign this at closing, amongst the hundreds of other papers that they
Right.
get pushed in front of them.
I guess the question I got to ask is, if you're there at closing and then you're bringing in a new contract, what were you there to close on
Exactly.
before the new contract showed up?
Precisely.
Okay, I've not heard that one. That's an interesting
Yes.
one. Okay. The next thing I want to ask you is this. What are the elements to determine what is a fair and adequate amount of earnest money for a real estate purchase and sales agreement?
It just can't be a nominal amount. I mean, I don't know that I think of earnest money, another word for earnest money is good faith money.
Okay.
I mean, are you truly interested in purchasing this property? Are you putting enough earnest money down? I don't want to see a contract where, hey, I'm giving $1, I'm giving $10. You're purchasing or entering into a contract to purchase a piece of real estate. So we're going to have to look at the totality, but is it enough to reflect your bona fide intent to purchase that property? So the amount, of course, is going to be one thing, and it comes down to, is it a nominal amount?
And I think it depends. I think it depends on the whole contract purchase price.
Absolutely.
I think it also depends upon how desirable is that property in its economic and physical condition. Because I think you and I have talked about this off camera, that $100 is probably adequate earnest money for the right to go try and buy an over-leveraged house 4 weeks from foreclosure.
Perhaps, yes.
But at the same time, it's not $100. It's probably not enough to bind a contract to go buy a free and clear house.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, is it enough to reflect, your true intent to enter into the contract and purchase that property?
Yeah. So the key things that I'm taking away from this conversation are, you have to have the real legitimate intent to buy that property.
Correct.
Correct.
You have to have the ability to buy that property.
Right.
And then after you have that ability to buy that property, if someone else wants to buy it from you, either before you close on it because you'll assign it to them, or after you close on it, you can do whatever you want to with it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's what you're hearing.
Okay.
Exactly.
I made a reference in earlier in the conversation about various troubling clauses and language that you see in contracts, so to speak. And I've run across a couple of phrases, and we've talked about these, like tying it up. Is that a phrase that you don't like to hear?
I do not like to hear that.
Why don't you like to hear that?
Because it leads me to believe that you're simply entering into the contract to show that you have some sort of interest, or attempt to show that you have an interest to avoid license law. I'm just tying up the property. And so, first of all, that's not helping the seller. Second of all, as a regulator, I'm here to say, you have to follow 4735. And if that's your sole intention for entering into that contract, we've got a problem. And those are going to be some of the things that I'm going to be looking at, going, well, you're just tying it up to get an end buyer. Why don't you just get an agent? Why don't you have a licensed person help you? That's why we have licensed people.
That's a good point. What about the other phrase I heard is contingent upon finding another buyer?
Oh yeah, we see that a lot in contracts. Actually, are popping up where they will specifically state in the contract, I have no intention on closing on this contract. My only intention is to find that end buyer. There's clauses in contracts we see that the seller must immediately vacate upon signing this contract. Clauses like that people are putting in these contracts that clearly show they don't really have an intention to close. What they want is a vacant house to then advertise as, hey, look, got this, when they don't own anything on it.
I got you. What about the term flex option? Have you heard that?
Not as much.
No.
We've heard the option contracts and recording your option. The options that we see that get recorded are, ones that just say, I intend to possibly purchase this property. However, my true intention is to find an end buyer for the seller and purchase it and sell that contract for more than the property is under contract for. So, things like that that state, even on their face, that I don't intend to ever close on this, and this option's just in here to tie it up so nobody can close without me. Let's say this person comes in, gets a seller to sign this option contract without an intention of ever buying the property, and they go run down the courthouse, file it, and then seller wises up and says, you know what? Never heard back from this guy. I don't think he ever wanted to sell it. He hasn't done anything. And they legitimately sell their property. They're stuck with this lien now to get rid of before they can sell their property. So things like that where there is no intention are really what raise our flags.
I wanted to follow up with that option contract because I created an option contract for short sales that became very popular all over America. And the whole idea behind it was, I've got the right to buy this. I want to buy it. I'm negotiating with the bank. I'm going to be here whether it takes 6 weeks or 6 months to negotiate. But I want everybody to know I've got the right to buy this. So I'm recording a notice that I've got the right to buy this property. And so I've invested my time and resources in working with the bank to be able to buy this. I think that's evidence of an intent to go ahead and buy.
Right, and that's a completely different situation, especially when you're working with the bank and you've taken steps. And I understand that, there are people out there that teach, see who has foreclosures filed against them and then send them the letters, or write this note and pin it to their car to see if they're willing to sell the house to you and undercut. So, it really is a totality of the circumstances that you need to look at.
The last thing that I want to talk to you about terms in a contract is, what if someone says, well, what if I get the seller to agree in writing that I've got the right to show, market, and advertise the house while I'm still trying to buy it?
And we see that. We see that a lot.
Oh, no, we see it a lot, yes.
We see that a lot. You cannot contract to violate license law. So you can't enter into a contract and contractually say, well, the seller said I can do this. You still have to understand that there is license law, and you must follow license law. You can't contract around the law.
But let me ask it this way. What if I have in the contract where the seller gives me the right to advertise and show the property to a prospective tenant while I'm still in the escrow period? I think that's evidence that I'm planning on buying it as a rental, holding it, and putting it out on the market as a rental. What do you think about that?
No, I think you have to own it before you can put it out there as a rental.
Okay.
You're still advertising something that you do not own, even if you have permission from...
Advertising something I don't own. There you go.
You're getting permission from someone. Just because I got permission from Sheila to put a sign in her yard today, and she tells me, go ahead and do it, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to do that, I can't do that because license law doesn't allow me to do that. Why? Because I don't have a license. I may have a law degree, but I do not have a license to sell real estate.
Oh, you're just like me. I have a law degree and no license to sell.
Right.
Okay. So, but that's an interesting point because that's where you've just taught me something sitting right here about even to market for a tenant. I've got to wait till I close on it before I can start advertising for a tenant.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. I learned something. Cool. I think the last thing I want to say is thank you very much for the education I've just gotten, and for the education I hope hundreds of thousands of other people get by watching this video over and over again. I know they're going to have questions.
Absolutely.
And so the suggestion that I have, and I want to make sure it's okay with you, is that they need to find a good local agent and ask that agent to help them go buy some houses.
Sure, absolutely. Or if they're intending to, be an investor, or they want to purchase property on their own, then I encourage them to reach out, maybe to a licensee, but if they don't want to use a licensee, they need to reach out to an attorney and make certain that they're not running afoul of license law. There are some pretty stiff penalties that are associated with engaging in unlicensed activity. The Real Estate Commission can impose up to $1,000 a day.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And, our job is, as regulators, is to help people stay into compliance and to help people understand what is here. So we are open and we are more than happy to answer the questions that we can without providing legal advice. But hey, this is what you need to look at. You know, this is what we've got. So if people have questions and want to give us a call, they can find us at 614-466-4100. They can ask to speak to someone in the legal section or someone in enforcement, and we'll be happy to work together and try to answer all the questions we can.
Would you also recommend that they take a moment, maybe even a half an hour, and sit down and read the code section 473501?
Absolutely. Read the code section, visit our website. There, we have newsletters out there. There's information on there that can help people just understand what is allowable, what's not allowable. We really want people to be in compliance with the law. So, reach out to us.
And just because they went to a seminar and heard someone say it from stage they could do it doesn't mean they can do it,
That's
right?
correct.
They ought to take the time and do their own due diligence,
That's right.
read the statute, get help, ask questions. If they've got questions, call that phone number one more time, please.
614-466-4100.
All right. With that, I want to say thank you very much to
Sure.
both of you. It's been informative. I've learned a little bit right now, right here, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you.